everybody. Welcome to the Fabled Upkeep. I'm one of your hosts, Brutal. We have Aqua and the Frogman. And today we're here to show you guys a wonderful new deck with Keskit and Tevesh Szat, Aristocrat Fun. This deck right here, we tried to stay under a budget of 300 and we came in well under that at 260. And let me tell you, this deck is quite spicy. I'll go ahead and let the Frogman over here lead us off to discuss a little bit about what we have here.
Yep, so as Brutal stated, we're doing a little Aristocrat fun, and as we tested this deck yesterday on MTGO, it was very nasty. It is lots of Aristocrats, lots of a little bit of life gain and life drain at the same time. It's a really nifty strategy. Let's definitely give a shout out to Aqua for coming up with this deck tech for sure. It was his idea and his brainchild for these two mono black commanders to come in and do this. So Aqua, I don't know if you wanted to kind of go over a little bit what you thought when you were thinking this.
Yeah, sure. Hello, friends. Yeah, my idea behind this was we would all kind of build a deck together. So Brutal, Frogman, and I built this. And we kind of settled on Keskit at first. We were looking at some of the new Commander Legends stuff. There's just so many possibilities in Commander Legends. I mean, I feel like we're going to have another year's worth of potential deck techs if we would just even focus on that set.
This has been quite the set. It's been quite the treat for anybody who loves EDH.
Yeah, sure. So go ahead and hover over Keskit. We'll show everybody what this guy does if you're not familiar. So it's 2 and a black for a 1/3, and you can tap him, sacrifice 3 other artifacts under creatures. Then you look at the top 3 cards of your library, you put 2 of them into your hand and the other into your graveyard. So we saw this guy, we're like, wow, this thing definitely has potential, especially since it has partner. We were like, well, Tevesh Szat, another mono black guy, he kind of feeds into Keskit. So Tevesh, I think people are more familiar with him. He's the partner planeswalker from Commander Legends. And so just a quick review, 4 and a black for 4 loyalty. And so the +2s create 2 0/1 black throw tokens. And then you can +1 and you can sacrifice another creature or planeswalker, and if you do, you draw 2. But if that one is your commander, you draw 3 cards. And then the -10 is gain control of all commanders from, I guess, any zone. So you can do it from whether it's on the battlefield or from the command zone. But for this deck, we're kind of focusing on the first 2 abilities. So the first ability of Tevesh feeds into Keskit. So that's already providing us some value based on that if we want to do it. Or if we're really behind, we can just go ahead and sacrifice Keskit to Tevesh. So it's basically a 5-mana draw 3 spell, right off the bat in our command zone where we don't even have to put any work into having card advantage. So I think it was a good idea to combine these two. And we wanted to add a little spice. So we have a sub-artifact theme kind of, and we'll showcase that as we go through the tech. So yeah, I guess let's first take a look at the main game plan of the deck. So we're going to be looking at a lot of the Aristocrats. Right? Yeah, token generation and Aristocrats effects.
Yes. And I want to go ahead and showcase one of my all-time favorite cards in this deck right now, which is Ayara, First of Lockthwain. Ayara, First of Lockthwain right here is probably my favorite Aristocrat commander that I ever built myself. I mean, it's a no-brainer. She's absolutely wonderful. She's got card draw built into her, and she is a 3 black, 2/3 body that says whenever Ayara, First of Lockthwain or another black creature enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life and gains 1 life. You got a little bit of a Blood Artist effect and or Zulaport Cutthroat. Without death triggers, they're just ETB triggers, which makes it a lot more viable. And then she also has the ability of tap, sacrifice another black creature, and draw a card. So this also feeds again into what we're doing with Keskit and Tevesh. We got a little bit more card draw mechanic over here, and she is definitely the lifeblood of this deck, or one of the key pieces.
For sure, and, I would definitely agree with that.
And then you're also looking at your standard Aristocrat build. So we do run into Blood Artist. So 1 in a black, 0/1 body. Whenever Blood Artist or another creature dies, any creature. So we're also looking at our opponent's boards. Death triggers on this. It's target player, not everybody, but just target player loses a life and you gain a life. Then we also run into, where is Mr. Zulaport? Hello, Mr. Zulaport. There you are. This is a 1 and a black 1/1 body. It says whenever Zulaport, Cutthroat, or another creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. You can see as these things start to together with also Vindictive Vampire, 3 and a black 2/3 body. Whenever another creature you control dies, Vindictive Vampire deals 1 damage to each opponent and you gain 1 life. When you see all these things, all these synergies coming together, you could definitely put out a lot of pain and keep the card draw going, which is wonderful in Keskit and Tevesh. I mean, I honestly look at this deck and I'm thinking, wow, we're in mono black, guys, and we're going to be churning cards more than what a green deck would, which is, I think, the most fundamental part of this deck working. It's the continuous card advantage that we're able to generate.
For sure, for sure. Let's highlight one of the spicier cards in the deck, Marionette Master. So this kind of ties into our artifact theme. So Marionette Master is 4 and 2 black for a 1/3, and it has Fabricate 3, so that's a Kaladesh mechanic. When this enters the battlefield, you can either put 3+1/+1 counters on it or create 3 1/1 colorless servo creature tokens. And it says, whenever an artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, target opponent loses life equal to Marionette Master's power. So this card actually plays 2 roles in our deck. So one, it could come in as a 4/6, and then if we have other token generators that make artifacts, right, like Mirror Battlesphere, then for everything that dies from Mirror Battlesphere, we can just start, hitting opponents for 4 life, which is huge. Or it's just a 6-drop 4 token generator. So if we, just need the tokens or bodies or something, we can just have them too. So this card really does a lot of work in this deck.
Oh, absolutely.
And to jump onto that, I think one of my favorites is definitely, let's take a look at Indrik Sar. So we played a game with this yesterday, and Indrik Sar definitely helped carry this game to the extreme. And Indrik Sar is a 4 and a black legendary creature. Whenever you play a creature spell, put X 1/1 black thralls. That way it kind of, if you feel like you want to have a bunch of thralls, it kind of goes with Tevesh Szat a little bit. And, they come into play as tokens, and where X is the spell's converted mana cost. And as you can kind of see, the black is obviously going to have a lot of larger converted mana cost cards, and that'll definitely feed into Indrik Sar very, very well. And then obviously whenever you control 7 or more thralls, you have to sacrifice Indrik Sar, Master Breeder. But to kind of counter that, we also have numerous sack outlets for sure. Obviously stuff like Viscera Seer, the classic 1 mana sacrifice creature scry one. We also have other stuff that we'll look into in the artifact section, but that's kind of definitely one of my favorite cards is Indrik Sar, and it plays so well into this deck, just with especially as you get later into the game, the larger, black's notorious for casting some of those larger mana cost spells. So it was really, really interesting to kind of see those two play together. Freddie, I don't know what you thought about some of the other cards.
I mean, now let's look back into the artifact theme or sub-theme that we were talking about, and also sticking with the Aristocrat theme that we've got with Marionette Master. We also tried to figure out ways to capitalize on that, and you can definitely see that with Pitiless Plunderer, which is a 3 and a black 1/4 that says whenever another creature you control dies, create a colorless artifact. Okay, so here we are with creating ramp and feeding Keskit with tokens to sack if we need to, or we can keep the tokens to continuously play more of our spells and keep the ball rolling. Also, let's go back over to our enchantments. And the card that goes really well with this is we're going to look at Revel in Riches. Revel in Riches right here is a 4 and a black, and this is one of my favorite win cons if you're able to pull it off. Obviously, this is a kill on sight spell, so do beware of that. But whenever a creature opponent controls dies, create a colorless artifact token. So here we go with more treasures, more sack outlets, or Keskit, or more targets for Keskit to sack to generate the card draw. So with that in mind, we've definitely got quite the package over here for Aristocrat style theme. Now let's look a little bit also in ways to recur things that we kill. If we decide to kill things from our board with some board wipes and or anything that'll fill our graveyard, we definitely want to have ways to bring things back. And we definitely looked into, let's look at Victimize. I think Victimize is a very underrated card, which is, we've seen a couple of reprints, and I think this one's great. I mean, you're looking at, use 2 target creature cards in your graveyard, and you can sacrifice a creature. So again, we could look at the thralls that we're generating, sack one of those, and then we're able to bring 2 things back. So let's say we have a nice Mirror Battlesphere and or I don't know, a Marionette Master got taken out. Well, here we go. Now we can sack a thrall and be able to generate and bring that right back to the battlefield with Victimize, which I think is absolutely phenomenal. We have a good old... Yep, go ahead. Sorry, Aqua.
Yep, Victimize is already a solid card in this deck. It is phenomenal.
Yes, it's definitely... I would actually I would value this over Reanimate personally, and it's at 21 cents. It's a no-brainer. I mean, it's a powerhouse in this deck. But
it's funny, we are also playing Reanimate, but Victimize is arguably better in this build. Yes, I agree.
I would think so. Why don't you go ahead and continue on a little bit, Aqua, on Reanimation and what we're trying to do with the package in that.
Yeah, sure. Let's take a look at Living Death, which I'm sure is a board wipe most people are familiar with. In this deck, it plays double duty, so it's both a board wipe and it gets back all of our token generators that died, so we can sack them again. Just absolutely incredible. I think that Living Death is one of the most underrated board wipes in Commander, because it forces everyone to sacrifice their creatures, so it gets around all the indestructible, hexproof, all that kind of stuff that mono black typically can't deal with. So Living Death, incredible card in this deck. Also, if we're just focusing on board wipes for now, let's talk about Blood on the Snow. So this is a new one from Kaldheim. So we're playing Snowlands in this deck, Snow Basics. And we threw Blood in the Snow in. It may not be the most optimal card, but we all thought it was pretty fun, so we're putting it in, trying to test it out. So if you find that, you know, you're not the biggest fan of this card, you know, swap it out for one of the upgrades we'll suggest later. But what this one does, it's 4 and 2 black for a snow sorcery. So you can choose one. You can destroy all creatures, or you can destroy all planeswalkers. Then return a creature or planeswalker card with converted mana cost X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is the amount of snow spent to cast the spell. So actually, this actually has some synergy with our commander, because if Tevesh dies for whatever reason, we could actually bring it back with Blood on the Snow. So that's kind of an interesting little synergy. So we might be
I think you're right on that, because, you know, if you're thinking about it, though you said it was 6, I mean, take a look at Inguruk's Wake, right? That's the only other kind of black board wipe that also takes care of that planeswalker, right? But in Blood in the Snow, you get to get something back. That's just, the synergy with that is just fantastic. Such a good pick that you had for that one.
Yeah. I forgot who exactly picked that out for the deck, but you know, that was a nice one to include in the list. We could talk about Agadeem's Awakening, but I feel like that's kind of been talked about to death at this point. Just, it's an MDFC, mono black, auto include, you know, if your budget allows for it. So you definitely want to play that one. And then also Feed the Swarm is another new kind of staple-ish card, I would say, that more people are including, especially in mono black builds, because now black gets enchantment removal. Why?
He doesn't like enchantment
I don't know, but we've got it, so we're playing it, right? So it's one way to get rid of those nasty enchantments we can't deal with.
Let's break the color pie just a little bit with this card, right? I mean, why not?
Well, I like it a whole lot better, because usually I would run a Meteor Golem or something along those lines to take care of that. So 2 mana cost from 7, way better in my opinion.
Oh,
I love it.
Yeah.
Honestly, while I think that
better.
Meteor Golem in this deck would be a little bit more synergistic with the fact that it's an artifact and can sack Keskit, I think that's 7 CMC, right, on that?
It is.
Yep.
Correct.
It's entirely... Yep. I think it's a little... We're going a little overboard with the mana cost and the mana curve that we're trying to stay in. So being able to do something for 2 and being able to deal with an enchantment, I love it.
No, I think you're right on that. You know what, and I know from myself, black has so many amazing cards, and what you can end up doing is really, you know, especially because you're trying to do, in my gameplay style, I want to do all those big fun, exciting things at the end of the game. But the problem is they all cost, 5 to 9 mana, right? And you can end up stacking the top end of your deck with just extremely difficult cards to cast if you don't have all your mana, So it's good to kind of tone that down a little bit, even though, if you don't like Feed the Swarm, you could definitely go with the Meteor Golem if you're wanting to do the
if you want to play if anybody who's played with Mr. Frogman over here knows, Frogman likes to play decks are a little bit more on the he likes the fun factor. He doesn't want to go too competitive. So if you want to keep it that way, you could definitely look at Meteor Golem as a secondary option for this to have a little bit more fun with cards that are a little bit more
big and splashy.
Big and splashy. Thank you. You took the words right out of my mouth on that one. I did want to highlight something real fast before we forget, and I think this is actually an MVP now that we're talking about enchantments, and we're going to go back to the Aristocrat theme for 1 second. We're going to go look at Bastion of Remembrance. We totally forgot about this card there for a second, guys. And this card
did work.
And this one, I got to think, I believe it was Aqua that pointed this one out, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yep, it's one for my Korea that's kind of got under the radar a little bit. Go ahead, though, Brutal.
Okay, so this one is a 2 and a black enchantment that says, when Bastion of Remembrance enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. Now, who said that we couldn't play white creatures in a black deck?
Haha.
No, yep. But the most important part about this card is right here. Whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life.
Boy, if you thought Zulapor Cutthroat was annoying, try getting rid of an enchantment over a creature, because it's even harder to get rid of. And if we're hurting for an Aristocrats thing, if people are like doing some crazy stuff where they're exiling things, well, Bastion of Remembrance, it's just that much harder to get rid of.
And that definitely came up in our game.
Totally
because I wasn't able to get rid of that enchantment. Creatures are definitely more susceptible to those board wipes. They're easier to get rid of. But man, Bastion of Remembrance, excellent inclusion into this deck because it is really tough to get rid of. Probably most people don't play enough of those enchantment removals, and it depends on what colors you're playing too, right? So I think this one was a solid include in this deck for sure.
Yep, and I also want to talk about Revenge of the Raven since it's kind of in a similar spot. It's not an Aristocrats card, but it just helps in the end game where people are getting ready to attack. They think twice when they see this because now they're like, okay, the person's gonna gain life, and I'm gonna lose life for each creature that I attack this person with. So it's almost better. I think that this card is better than Ghostly Prison and Propaganda. Yep. There, I said it. I think that this card is better than those because I think that this card actually prevents attacks better than those other two. Because with this card, they could potentially lose the game if they don't consider the math correctly. And
situational, yes. Situationally, absolutely.
And go ahead.
Continue.
Yeah, I was going to say, as the game goes on, people are less willing to do math. I'm sure you both have experienced this, and you don't do the math right, that you just straight up lose. So there you are.
Yeah, that's very true. The only downside and drawback with this card, which I want to point out, is if you're playing any kind of equipment-based Voltron-ish deck, they don't really care about this card.
True.
But then again, that's the only drawback to this card. I think it's a wonderful include, especially in what we're doing with this deck. The life gain is absolutely paramount for its success.
I mean, you got to think that it kind of goes with it's death by 1,000 cuts, right? Yeah. So at the beginning of the game, everybody's like, it's no big deal. It's 1 life, right? What's 1 life, Aqua? No big deal. Who cares, right?
Well,
as you continue through the game, it's going to stack up, And
this is a card that if you're not careful, it's going to get you over multiple turns. So you got to think multiple turns ahead with this thing. And it was a good point you brought up about the Voltron strategy, Brutal. But the thing is, like, when are you sitting down at a table and, like, 3 people are playing Voltron/non-creature decks, right?
Absolutely
You're going to get at least 1 person in your pod that's probably... It's going to save you at least 1 or 2 attacks from that person. I could almost guarantee you that. So the card...
I agree.
Puts its value in just from that perspective. So the floor on this is honestly not that low, but the ceiling is potentially very high with this kind of card.
High. I agree. I agree. You're right. I just wanted to point it out for everybody as a word of caution. The only drawback is that. Besides that, there's like you said, a very very high ceiling on this card, and it's a wonderful card. Um, let's go look at some instance spells real quick. Something that I wanted to point out, which again is going to feed into our aristocrat theme, and it's also a new card. Is going to be Szat's Will from Commander Legends. This one, I think it's very underrated. Obviously, in a deck like this with aristocrat theme, is going to do some serious work. And Szat's Will reads, it's 4 and a black, and then it says choose one, and if you control a commander, as you cast a spell, you may choose both. So the first mode is each opponent sacrifices a creature they control with the greatest power. And the most important, and this is very important for this card, you need to make sure you have your commander out. Obviously, it's great for some removal if in a pinch, but if it's the only option, great. But you really want to get this for both. It's exile all cards from all opponents' graveyards, then create X01 black thralls, black keyword. Yara loves this. X01 black thrall creature tokens, where X is the greatest power among creature cards exiled this way. And let me tell you, this came in clutch for Mr. Frog. We were playing with this deck. It put in some work.
I agree.
It creates some massive advantage. And let's talk a little bit about how you could also use these tokens in Ashnod's Altar. It's in this deck.
Real quick, before you move on, another thing about this Szat's Will is it's another instance, right? So obviously, mono black is not great at dealing with certain things, right? And I think one cool thing that you can highlight on Szat's Will is that, that each opponent sacrifices the greatest power. That can come in handy, especially as other people are probably playing some Eldrazi. Everybody loves to play those Ulamogs and Kozileks. This is just a great spell that you can quickly cast. Boom, 5 mana. Hey, guess what? You're going to have to sacrifice that, right? Everybody likes those big, stompy creatures. Well, guess what? This is going to take care of that. So I think it's really great.
Yeah.
Even if you only get to cast that top one.
Yeah, and I love the fact that this card's an instant because you can just get people out of nowhere. And what's great about this card is that both modes are actually solid. So even if you don't have any of your commanders on the field for whatever reason, both the modes are great. I mean, most of the time, you're going to be exiling the graveyards to get the thralls unless graveyards have been exiled at some point for whatever reason. But, I mean, my gosh, just the fact that it's an instant makes it
Yeah,
awesome.
And I think Brutal hit it really well, is that this card was definitely undervalued. I can definitely say so myself.
Look at the price point on this card. 24 cents,
right,
guys.
24 cents.
Yeah,
and
I mean...
think, it's... I'm a believer, right? I believed it yesterday when I played this card. It did work.
Oh, yeah.
High five to you, Brutal, for picking a good one.
Absolutely, guys. But let's continue down real quick into some artifacts. Ashnod's Altar, I wanted to touch base on this one. Now, this one has actually gone down in price, which is quite lovely, at $6.76 right now. I mean, I believe it was hovering around $8 to $10 about a year ago. But this card right here, this is a staple, man. This is for token decks. You love this. This is mana generation right here.
Yep, I would say that now that the altars have gone in price, pick up as many as you can. I mean, this is just an auto-include staple for a lot of decks in Commander, and especially these aristocrat type decks. But I mean, this card puts in so much work, it's not even funny.
Oh yeah, and this one says it's 3 colorless, and it's an artifact that states sacrifice a creature, add 2 colorless mana to your mana pool. Play this ability as a mana source.
I like this one a lot. Just not only that, but just I value, even in my own personal deck building experience, I definitely probably value that sacrifice creature, that sack outlet effect, just because, there's a lot of exile going around these days, right? Blue's now got it, green's got it. I mean, I think every color has it, right? So it's these are just classic cards that you really want to have in your deck, because it is so fun to, somebody goes to path or exile your creature, and you just say, in response, I'm just going to sack it to this, and then it goes to your graveyard. Those are great includes, Brutal, for sure.
It's a very, very good point that you made as well there. It's being able to protect your board and your graveyard, especially in a deck like this one, where you do care about reanimation. It's a wonderful feeling being able to hose a player. And this also is a great target for removal, so it definitely draws attention to itself on the board.
Unfortunately.
Which is
Unfortunately or
why we
fortunately,
include other free sacrifice outlets in the
That's true.
deck. We'll get to
Yes.
those in a moment, but I just wanted to say about Ashnod's Altar and free sack outlets in general. Yeah, so you've got the exile, of course, but you have other considerations too, right? I mean, Cyclonic Rift to the format's Boogeyman. Don't have to really worry about that.
Right.
And also, now a lot of days, people are really focusing on their commanders and their abilities to make sure they synergize with their decks, right? Especially since the Tuck rule change that happened a while back. But now I'm seeing these days a lot of these enchantments that are just nerfing commanders, you know, kind of like the one that turns them into an insect, the indestructible insect enchantment. I forget the name of it, but it's like I think it's called Darksteel Mutation or something. But
Correct.
but like Imprison in the Moon, those kind of enchantments just taking your commander out for the rest of the game. Well, guess what?
Absolutely.
If I got a sack outlet on board, that's never happening to me. So they'll throw it on another person's commander. Great, awesome.
That's a good point. I definitely, especially when those are cards that I play, because that's exactly right. You know, commanders are so high value right now because obviously the design space has opened up some pretty powerful things over these past few years. You know, it's those are definitely cards that I play more of. You know, Song of the Dryads, Imprison in the Moon, Darksteel Mutation, all those different cards. That's a great point.
Yeah, and I agree. Playing them more and more often in your decks that you can slot them in it's going to it's going to increase your win percentage a lot, because just being able to take out someone's insane commander like Thrasios, for example, just like them not having it is going to be terrible for that player. So.
Absolutely.
Oh yes. Let's go ahead and continue down. I want to just touch base on a few artifacts here. Obviously, we'll touch base on Ballistic Citadel later, but I really want to touch and highlight some of the key components to this deck and what makes it really, really one being, or two being, let's go look at Conjurer's Closet, and then we're going to look at Erratic Portal. Now, Conjurer's Closet and Erratic Portal, these are both bounce effects and flicker effects, so to speak, in this deck to generate even more tokens to feed the machine. So Conjurer's Closet is 5 MC, and at the beginning of your end step, you may exile target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under your control. This right here, I mean, this is huge. You with something like this, Mere Battlesphere is a great target for Conjurer's Closet. And Mere Battlesphere, didn't go over it. It's 7 CMC 4/7 that says whenever Mere Battlesphere enters the battlefield, create 4 1/1 colorless mirror artifact creature tokens. So the gist, at the end of your turn, on Mirror Battlesphere, generate 4 more. So now you have 8 tokens. You can sack some.
That's
Keskit. You can use them to buff up Mirror Battlesphere with its second ability. Then there's plenty of other options within the deck that are wonderful targets.
I mean that's 8 life total loss if you have, you know, Blood Artists. If you're killing them and sacking them, that's awesome.
Exactly.
For sure. And what's funny is, you know, white and blue are more so known as the blink colors. So I think Conjurer's Closet in this deck, people aren't expecting it. Like, I don't really see Conjurer's Closet in Aristocrats decks very often. So just the fact that we have it in ours, we're able to just drop it, and people are like, they're like, yep, you guys are in trouble if this thing sticks around until end of turn, which is great.
Yep.
It activates right at our end step, so we get the effect pretty much right away, unless they have an instant speed removal.
Exactly. And then here's one that I don't see very often, and I think is an undervalued card. Erratic Portal. This is one of my includes in the deck. I love this card. It's Erratic Portal reads it's 4 CMC, and it reads A1, tap it and return target creature to its owner's hand unless its controller pays 1. Now, when you look at this, you think, well, you could bounce the other players' stuff. Well, no, we don't really care about doing that with this deck. We want to bounce our own things, and we're sure not going to pay the 1 to prevent it from happening. Here again, we're able to bounce a Mere Battlesphere and then replay it, or save something from dying on a board wipe. It's got a lot of versatility, and I think it's a great card to definitely include in a build like this one.
Yeah.
I think, you know, yeah.
The way that
Go
it's
ahead.
worded with target creature, that's the key. So that's what enables us to bounce our own stuff with it. There's the blue version of this card, Crystal Shard, which, I mean, obviously if we were playing blue, we'd play that, but we can't. So, I mean, Erratic Portal is the next best thing. And, I mean, occasionally this'll get our opponents too, right? I mean, if they're not familiar with the card, they tap out and we're like, okay, well, I'll just bounce your 10 CMC creature back to your hand. So
Very
they
true.
always have to keep this in mind. So even if we don't necessarily do that as our main way of playing this card, it can be used that way. So it just, provides that kind of backup value for us too, which is awesome.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Another good card that I'm going to highlight just because it's the next one, and this is one that definitely I didn't think anything of it, but Heralding Banner. This one's for Alpha. He came up with it. I can tell you that, so this is a 3-mana cost artifact, right? As Heralding Banner enters the battlefield, you choose color. Obviously, we're going to choose black. Creatures you control of the chosen color get +1/+0. Now, when Aqua kind of mentioned this card, I thought, no, that's not going to be good. Man, I tell you what, I was absolutely 100% wrong. This was a fantastic card when it was played yesterday. That +1 actually makes a big difference, because the problem with those 0/1 throws is that's what they are, 0/1 throws. But this kind of gives that buff, and even that +1 makes a big difference. It can come in clutch if you're needing to destroy a creature. You got to think over the course of these past few years, there are a lot of cards that usually have 1 toughness, right? A lot of good stuff like Birds of Paradise and, all the, greens, Llanowar and all those type of things. So sometimes it's kind of important to have that, 1/1 blocker. And not only that, besides giving that +1/+0, it also, you can tap it. It's a mana rock, right? You can add 1 mana of the chosen color. So I was definitely surprised by this card, and it was actually one of my favorites from yesterday's game for sure.
I want to point something else out with this card, which makes it extremely versatile in what we're doing. Let's take a look again at Zulaport Cutthroat and Artist, right? Just care about creatures dying, right? So let's go back to Heraldic Banner. Think about this. So you're all of a sudden now you have, let's say you have 5-6 thralls on the board. You can swing in. You're taking the damage no matter what. Like if you really want, if you want to put pressure on the board, you're able to do that. You're able to swing in with 1/1 thralls, and okay, you're going to block them. And if you don't block them and kill them, you're going to take the damage. And if you do block them and kill them, you're still taking the damage. It doesn't really matter to us. We're still hitting you.
Yeah,
this card was amazing.
That's a great point. I included it just because I knew that it's a very unassuming card. Also, it's a mana rock. We're in mono black, so we're kind of hurting for ramp. So, I mean, the base use of this card is it ramps us, which is awesome. That's what you're looking for in Commander. But the ceiling on this card is so high, like you guys were saying. Like, I didn't even consider that. Like, I just have these things, but they got rid of my sack outlets. Well, I'm just going to attack you with all my thralls that I just made. I mean, I think this card
so
in this deck in particular, it is incredible. But in general, it's definitely undervalued. I feel, especially for monocolored decks, people should be playing Heraldic Banner more.
You won me over.
In non-green, in non-green monocolored decks specifically.
There you go. Yeah, green doesn't really need this, but yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's
I would not play this in green. Correct.
If you look at this, I honestly think this is a better version of a Command Sphere. Yeah, Commander Sphere definitely taps for all colors, but in monocolors, like monocolored decks.
Because this deck definitely doesn't need help in card draw. I'll tell you that.
Exactly, exactly. But it's just a wonderful card overall. Let me go and go ahead.
I was just going to say we are playing Commander Sphere, just for full disclosure, because of budget, right? I mean, it's 13 cents. So we're mono black.
We'll be going over some includes for upgrades later. That's going to be the second portion of this video.
Right.
But yes, Command Sphere is definitely in here. Commander Sphere is definitely in here for that reason. But I wanted to point out my favorite artifact of all, which is so synergistic and also a card that is usually got a lot of drawbacks to it, and it's going to be Wishclaw Talisman. A Wishclaw Talisman over here, this is a wonderful little tutor effect. Because
for $1.
For $1. Instead of a $30-$40 Plonic tutor, Anyways, let's go ahead and continue. Wishclaw Talisman says it's 1 and a black, and when it enters the battlefield, it comes with 3 wish counters on it. Let's remember what Keskit says. Keskit says that you can sack artifacts and/or creatures to it. Now, what's wonderful about this card is it's pay 1 and tap it. You essentially have a 3 CMC, you're a card to your hand. But this says when it's pay 1, tap it, remove a wish counter from Wishclaw Talisman, search your library for a card, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library, and opponent gains control of Wishclaw Talisman. What's wonderful about this is while the ability is on the stack, you can go ahead and activate Keskit. Sack it and 2 thralls, sack it and a couple of other treasures, whatever the case may be. Sack it. Nobody else is getting it. Only you got it. And this is absolutely perfect for this deck.
Oh yeah, it's basically Grim Tutor with no downside. If you have Keskit in play and are able to activate it, I mean, yeah, for $1, this is perfect for this deck. And
just remember that you can only do it on your turn. So there are times where you're like, oh, man, you go to try to do it, and you're like, oh, I can't even do it at that time. It makes a difference.
That's true. You do have to keep that in mind. But a lot of these tutors you play at sorcery speed anyways, right? So I mean, from that perspective, if we're comparing it to Demonic or Grim Tutor, it's kind of the same thing. But again, because it's an artifact, it can trip you up if you don't read the whole thing at once. So just keep that in mind. Absolutely. Like the Frogman said. Yep. And also, I want to, Brutal brought up a great point again, which I just want to re-emphasize, is that Keskit can sacrifice those treasure tokens that we're making from cards like Pitiless Plunderer, which is just so awesome, because that's the problem with those treasures, is later in the game they're usually awful because you don't need the extra mana. But my gosh, with Keskit, I just drew 2 cards off these treasures. Just unreal. The value is unreal.
Tap, sack 3 mana, or tap 3 and draw 2. Sign me up. Sign me up any day of the week.
Yeah, I mean, just incredible value.
And then let's go ahead and touch base on Dowsing Dagger. This is another one of Aqua's includes in the deck.
Yeah, I could talk about this for a minute, sure. I thought that this was a pretty spicy include, because let's imagine the scenario, right, where you don't really have any great 2 mana ramp options, such as like your Charcoal Diamonds of the world, your Arcane Signets, and you really don't have anything to play on turn 2. So you play this guy turn 2, right? So you give your opponent the 2/0/2 green plants. Well, you could play Keskit on turn 3, and then equip Keskit with this turn 4. Or if you don't even have any turn 1 or 2 plays, you play Keskit turn 3, you play and equip this turn 4, you swing in, and all of a sudden, go ahead and transform this guy. So it gives Keskit +2/+1, so it turns him into a 3/4, I think. And then when it deals combat damage to a player, you transform it, and you got Lost Veil, which is tap, add 3 mana of any one color to your mana pool. So we just got ourselves a Black Lotus, boys, if this thing flips. So the ceiling on this card is so incredibly high, it's not even funny. And, we're actually playing a black deck that does want to attack with creatures from time to time. So flipping this is not the hardest thing in the world.
Absolutely. This is a wonderful include and wonderful ramp in the colors that we're in. I love this card. I run it in a few of my decks. I think it's a great underrated card as well. It definitely puts in the work.
Yeah, I especially like this card in mono white builds too. This is a great card for mono white builds because you're looking to attack as fast as possible. And potentially you even get like the free equips, because there are certain cards that offer you to like auto equip these equipments onto creatures you control. But yeah, especially for mono black and mono white decks, Dowsing Dagger I think is a really, really good card.
And while we're still on the subject of ramp, why don't we go look at sort of the Animus. This is a frog special. Frogman loves this card. I think it's a great card.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so Sword of the Animus, obviously legendary artifact equipment for 2. Equipped creature gets +1/+1, which, hey, if you got some thralls, you could throw it on that or whatever else, I think one of my philosophies is, especially when you're playing, I'm a big fan of mono white, and which is not very many people like white, but I really value the Sword of the Animus, so whenever equip creature attacks, you may search your library for a basic land card and put it on the battlefield tapped. And one thing, with this card, it only equips for 2. It costs 2. I kind of value that the importance of getting actual lands, right? Lands are more difficult to get rid of, right? Especially, most people aren't going to be playing Armageddon. They're definitely not going to be playing with me if they're playing Armageddon, but in the sense, it's, but I do value having actual lands because it is a little bit more difficult. It's the same thing with Bastion of Remembrance, right? Enchantments are a little bit more difficult to get rid of. So, you always got to think when you're building these decks, and at least in my mind, I'm always thinking of those what-if scenarios. What should I do depending upon what's going to happen, right? And I always feel that if I, value those land drops, because I do play a lot of green, right? And, a lot of green players will play, those Birds of Paradise and those Mana Dorks and stuff like that. But really, if you think about it, the cards that really do justice are the ones like Rampant Growth and stuff that actually put physical lands down, because they're more difficult to get rid of. And I really value Sword of the Animus. It can really take you to the next level, because usually somebody with the most mana is most likely going to not only be able to do more than everybody else, but it can help lead them to victory at the end of the day. So yeah, Sword of the Animus is definitely one of my favorites.
Yeah, and that's a good point you touch on about, how we could possibly get wrapped up in, mass artifact or enchantment removal, because we're mono black. We do rely on artifacts for our ramp, so that is one of the weaknesses of this deck. But Sword, and even stuff like Dowsing Dagger, right, that turns into a land, it's harder to remove. So again, we're helping to, potentially cut our losses down the road, for the austere commands of the world that people just decide to wipe all artifacts. We're not totally set back then if something like that happens.
Exactly. Yep. I agree.
Absolutely. Let's continue on here, and let's go up to Bolas' Citadel. This is just an auto-include in, I think, any mono black deck. This just it puts in the work.
Yeah, I would say this card's infamous. If you're playing black, even with the 3 pips, I don't care if you're playing Jund. Like, you could be playing 3 colors, you play this card. But go ahead, Brutal.
Oh no, please! This was your include in the deck, and you're a huge fan of this card, so I want you to go ahead and highlight it and really explain why.
Yeah, it's 3 and 3 black, right? So look at the top card of your library anytime. And you can play the top card of your library. If you cast a spell this way, pay life equal to its converted mana cost rather than pay its mana cost. And its last ability is tap, sacrifice 10 land permanents. Each opponent loses 10 life. So yeah, that last ability, pretty nuts. But if we do activate it, yeah, especially with this deck, but if we do activate it, it's probably just going to be once, possibly twice in a game. I don't see it being activated multiple times. So
but again, with the Aristocrat theme that we're going for, I think that get this out and you're able to play out some cards off the top of your deck, plus with thralls and or artifacts, plus all the Aristocrat abilities that we have on the board. I think you could one-shot somebody with that easily.
I'll tell you,
for sure.
The game that we played yesterday, Aqua, I had Endrixar. I casted a 7 mana cost spell, got 7 of them. I used Bolas Citadel. I got rid of 10 0/1 thralls. Didn't need them. I ended up winning the game that way. So yes, that sacrificed 10 non-land permanents.
This deck in particular,
it was value, and a lot of people forget that ability is actually on Bolas Citadel.
Right, because it's so hard to do. But in our deck, wow, I guess it's a lot easier to do than I imagined. Because personally, I haven't played with the deck yet, so I'm kind of relying on both of your experience with it. But oh my gosh, if we could consistently activate that ability, whew, wow.
So
this card is definitely the MVP of the deck then. I would call this card the MVP. If we're consistently activating that last ability, that's truly, truly nuts.
So he popped off with that, stacked it, lost, each opponent loses 10 life, right? And then had 2 triggers from Bastion of Remembrance and I think it was Blood Artist or Zulaport. All I know is everybody lost 30 life in one go. I'm like, you're kidding me. You feel like you got hit by a Mack truck and don't even know where it came from. You're like, what just happened?
Well, yeah, I mean, And I was definitely a huge fan of this card when it first came out. Like the ability to just pay life, right? That's what black does, right? That is essentially black. This is the most black of black cards right here, because you're paying life. You know, it's giving you that ability to cast any of these cards that are on top of your deck. You know, and it's just so awesome. I love it. It's such a great card.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So some great synergy with this card. I don't know if are we playing Necropotence? I forget if we
No.
wound up putting that.
Well, it's
Not
not in
in
budget right now.
budget.
That we're going to be talking about that.
But Necropotence and Bolas's Citadel, oh my gosh, if you have the budget for Necropotence, so what you do, because Necropotence allows you to exile the top card of your library for 1 life. I mean, you put it into your hand at the end of the turn. But in terms of Bolas's Citadel, like, if you've got a land on top, you just exile it and look at the next one. If that's a land, you exile it, and then, oh my gosh, guess what? I pay life to continuously get me gas, and I'm gaining life when I sacrifice creatures. Whew, we might just win that turn.
Yeah. We could
just, you know, basically, you know, quote unquote combo win if you have both those cards in play. Just a final thought on Bolas's Citadel. If you have Necropotence, it's in the budget. You definitely want to combine those two together. But I think that we've covered pretty much the main wins that this deck's going to have. So we went over the Aristocrats theme. Kind of talked about the board wipes, you know, bringing creatures back, generating tokens, even potentially attacking with them with stuff like Heraldic Banner. So now let's kind of go over some of the bread and butter of the deck, if you will. So we're going to talk about card draw and ramp for a couple minutes here. So actually, we have fewer sources of card draw in the main deck because both Keskit and Tevesh offer us card draw as commanders. So that's already 2 spells that we have access to that can draw us cards from the command zone. So we really don't need to focus on like straight up card draw in the deck as much. But, you know, since we're playing the Aristocrat strategy, there are definitely includes that we want to put in here because they're really, really good with what we're trying to do. For the first one of those being Liliana Dreadhorde General. So this Planeswalker, whenever a creature you control dies, you draw a card. As Aristocrats, that's what we're doing. There's a bunch of other text on this card. A lot of it's can be relevant, but most of it is irrelevant. I mean, yeah, we can make zombie tokens. We can make each player sacrifice 2 creatures, but really we just care about the first one, which is the static ability, which is whenever a creature you control dies, draw a card. So really, really good from that perspective. Ayara incidentally draws us cards at a bit of a slower rate, so we just have to tap sacrifice to draw. Let's see what else draws us cards. Erebos, so this is a nice include. Stops our opponents from gaining life, so that's a nice little side benefit, or we can pay 1 in the black, pay 2 life, draw a card. So we're going to have a lot of extra life, so we can just sink mana into that if we have a mana sink we're looking to use. Let's see. We've got Sidisi Undead Vizier, so that's a tutor we haven't talked about yet. That's, you know, just kind of a solid tutor that we have in there. You can exploit a thrall, tutor up a card. Pretty solid include. Smothering Abomination. I want to talk about this guy for a minute now. Smothering Abomination is probably the best card draw engine we have in this deck, because whenever we sacrifice a creature, we draw a card and it's only 4 mana. And it allows us to sack a creature as part of itself. So some of these other cards where you have to sack creatures to draw, you know, you have to have another way to do it. But this, you know, it can be a Phyrexian Arena if we need it, like if we have nothing else going on, and we can sacrifice it to its own ability too. So we can use
Phyrexian Arena with no downside.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I think this is a very underrated card. It's under $1. This card, I personally play it. I have a Prosh deck, and this is one of the best card draw engines in that deck. I think that Smothering Abomination is very undervalued. I think it is a really, really good card draw engine, especially for Aristocrat style decks.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just agreeing. Absolutely.
Yep. Let's talk about Villas for a second. I think people are pretty familiar with him at this point. Doesn't really synergize that well with our deck. We have it in here because it's on the cheaper end. It's only $3. If it sticks around, it's kind of like Revenge of the Ravens, which you mentioned earlier. So it kind of stops people from attacking us because, you know, damage causes loss of life is the reminder text on the card. So if we're attacked and we get hit for 7 or 8 while Villas is on board, we just draw 8 cards. That's probably not what our opponents are looking to give us. So Villas is just a solid card overall because we can also, it's a mana sink. You can We can pay life, pay a black, give a creature -1/-1, so it kills things. It also draws the cards when we pay the life. So overall, just a solid include, especially for the budget that we're looking at. Not
Let's
sure if we
touch
talked.
base on village rights now too. More card draw.
Yeah, sure. Yep. So Village Rites is one of the little pieces of spice I thought of for this deck. So this is a newer card. I think it was first printed in M21, just got reprinted in Kaldheim. So it's a black. It's an instant. You can you sacrifice a creature in addition to paying the black, and you draw 2. So just 1 black, draw 2 cards, instant speed. You know,
I just
really,
want to
really
point
soft.
out from now on, you can only play the Kaldheim version because the artwork is very, very awesome. They're called the Ravens something. The oh my god! Anybody here watch Vikings? Anybody?
No.
Never mind. We're gonna edit this out. Continue.
Anyways, let's go back to Yawgmoth for a second. So Yawgmoth's pretty infamous. You can do infinite combos with it. We don't have any of the Undying creatures in here because that's, I don't know, I feel like that's easy mode. We're not really looking to win that way. This is more geared as a low power kind of deck. We want to be able to play this in the lower power pods on play EDH. And but we still want to include it in here because even though it's a $20 card, it just does a lot of things that we're looking for in our deck. And because we have a Planeswalker as a commander, we could potentially try an Ultimate Tevesh just to go for some fun if that's what we're looking for. Because yeah, you pay 1 life, sacrifice another creature to put a -1/-1 counter onto another creature, draw a card. So it's like removal, it's sacrifice, it's a free sacrifice outlet. And again, like we talked about earlier, the power of free sacrifice outlets cannot be understated, especially in a deck like this.
The proliferate effect is pretty cool with Tevesh. Really
Yeah.
want to go down that right.
There could be other ways to proliferate in this deck that I'm not seeing right at the moment. I forget I forget if there's other ways. I mean, okay, Marionette Master, maybe there's like other cute little things that you could do if you have the things in play to do them. But yeah, for the most part, that proliferate is what we're looking to do on Tevesh for the most part. Let's see if you
I
scroll.
wanted to touch.
Go,
Yeah, I wanted to touch base on the enchantments here for a second as well.
Yeah. So let's talk about Phyrexian Reclamation for a second. So I would not consider this card draw in any sense, but it's definitely like card advantage and card value. So it's really cheap. It's just a black, and then you pay a black and pay 2 life to return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So really simple in its design. The execution is even smoother though, because it's so little mana, and we're gaining life all the time anyways. So that pay 2 life doesn't even matter in a deck like ours. So it's just, you're constantly just getting your creatures back to your hand to cast them. It's just, every time I play this card, it overperforms for me. I just love it so much.
Wonderful card, absolutely, especially with making sure that the Aristocrat package stays on board.
Yep.
Online.
And then let's talk about Dark Prophecy then. So this is probably another really great card draw engine for this deck. So it's whenever a creature you control dies, you draw a card and lose a life. So it's harder to remove than the Smothering Abomination and Liliana. It's an enchantment, it's harder to remove, and it gives us card draw for doing the things that we want to do, which is great. So
and then let's talk about the synergy between this and Bastion of Remembrance. It's such an amazing little one. It's like, okay, so we don't lose any life, we draw a card, and you lose life instead. Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's great with any Aristocrat type effect that's on the board.
Absolutely. Then Attrition. Attrition's a good one. We didn't want to go into Grave Pact or things like that. We wanted to keep it budget again. And this card here, I think, is a little underrated. Yes, it says target non-black creature, but it's definitely a great removal piece in the deck to just spot removal something off the board. Pay 1, sacrifice a creature. We have plenty of them. Destroy target non-black creature.
Yeah, we decided to go the attrition route just because the Grave Pact / Dictate of Ereboses of the world, I feel like that it's also easy mode, and also it's kind of oppressive for our opponents. Like, we would like our opponents to try and participate in the game. So if you're looking for a mid-power level version of this deck, you definitely want to put those Grave Pact type effects in just to help control the board for you. But attrition it's a nice middle ground, right? Because it allows you to just pick off things that are, the most important threats on the board, rather than, just forcing everyone to just get rid of cards, even if that might help your game plan in like an indirect way, if you know what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And why don't we touch base on some of the lands here real quick? I guess the biggest one and one of the most important ones here is going to be Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx. We don't have Cabal Coffers in the main board here because of budget restrictions, but this right here is wonderful. It's tap, add colorless, or you could pay to tap and add basically black equal to the devotion, the color.
Yep, and we are very devoted to black, so this will probably be adding 4 or 5 mana on average if we're able to tap it. So it's definitely a nice form of ramp in our deck for sure. Mm-hmm.
We definitely include a Reliquary Tower in this deck just so that we can make sure we keep maximum hand size. We don't have one. Wonderful.
Yeah, typically I actually don't play Reliquary Tower in my decks, especially decks that are 3 or more colors, because for me, fixing my colors is like of the utmost importance in a game. Because it feels really bad to be, first of all, it feels really bad to be mana screwed, right? So everyone hates that feeling. But imagine if you're color screwed. Ugh, that's just the absolute worst, when you have the lands but you can't cast it because you don't have the colors. Anyways, that's kind of an aside. That's just my personal thing. But we put it in
like this one.
Yeah, in a deck like this one, mono black, and our commanders are based on card draw, and just having value in your hand, it's really good. It's really awesome. So we don't have to discard any of that extra gas that we would draw.
Yep, and then let's look at Memorial of Folly and Witch's Cottage. I think in this deck again, if we don't have Phyrexian Reclamation, we've got Memorial of Folly and or Witch's Cottage. Basically, they both want with Witch's Cottage. It cares about how many swamps you have into play, which should have plenty. And when it enters the battlefield, you may return target card from your graveyard on top of your library. So again, the card draw that we have in this deck, we're able to get the creature back in hand and play it right away. And Memorial Folly is it comes into play tap, so you have to wait until next turn. But it's pay 2 and a black, sacrifice it, and return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Again, recursion. I keep the Aristocrat theme going, or Aristocrat package going and online. This is a great way to do it.
Yeah, they're just cheap, really great budget options it includes. One point I want to make about Witch's Cottage, and like the Witch's Cottages of the world, where you get like effects when they come into play based on certain situations. Like, I would say don't be afraid to play this on turn 1 or 2 or even 3. Like, if you really don't have a lot of lands in your hand, I feel like that's a mistake a lot of players make, where they try and hold on to this just to get the maximum value. Like, at the end of the day, this is a land that gives us some upside some of the time. That's the way you have to think about it. So with these kind of lands, like don't be afraid to just drop them into play if you need them.
Then I wanted to touch base on War Room as well real fast. This is one from Commander Legends, and this one, yes, we have plenty of card draw in the deck with our package, but the event that we don't have anything online, we can still come back and get some more advantage with this. It's taps for colorless, so pay 3 and tap it and pay life equal to the number of colors. So we pay 1 life and we draw a card. So pay 3, lose 1 life, draw a card. I think it's a great little card.
I do too. Like, Frogman made a good point about lands not being interacted with, and this is a land that draws us cards, and we don't even need our commanders in play to use it. Like, it's great. Like, if everything else is gone, at least we have War Room, right? So, like, it's something that it gives us value. We're looking to grind value with this deck, so, we've got it. And especially since we're mono black, this is a great card for this deck.
Absolutely.
Yep, for sure.
Let's go down real fast and look at some of the upgrades for the deck. We all put a couple cards in here that we really feel would do very well. And go ahead and start us off, Frog, with your includes you think would be great.
So I guess my biggest includes is I'll go to the lands. The two, obviously, that everybody would go to is obviously Urborg and the Cabal Coffers package. That's just... any black deck you play, and anyone that I build is going to have these two particular cards in the deck. These just provide so much value, especially if you have this with Nykthos. It's just going to allow you to cast those bigger spells that I like to do. So these are definitely two that if you have the money, save up I didn't realize how much Cabal had gone up, but man, it's getting up there. So you probably have to save a pretty good penny. But these are two excellent includes. If you were to put just anything, I think these two, from my perspective, would be the best.
Yep. And then we can touch base on Lake of the Dead. I think is a very interesting land that's just a little bit on the expensive side. $94 is no small feat, and it does have some drawbacks to it, but what you do get out of it is massive ramp. This is, again, if you want to power up your deck and go into a more mid-level to even high. I don't know if we can get this deck to high, but this one, it says when it enters the battlefield, sacrifice a swamp or bury Lake of the Dead. Okay, then it taps for black. Wonderful. So we sack to a land to generate black, the tap land. But the second ability is the most important one. Is sacrifice a swamp when you tap it to add 4 black to your mana pool. Now this can definitely set you apart at the table and get you definitely an advantage to really perform. Again, $94, not exactly a budget-friendly card, but definitely a wonderful auto include or a wonderful include in black deck. Aqua?
Should probably talk about your favorite brutal.
Yeah, absolutely. Panharmonicon. We were definitely discussing about putting this in the deck, but it ended up not making the cut. I personally, in a build like this, I will be adding this one for my build. I just love doubling ETB effects and triggered abilities of permanence you control trigger twice. It's wonderful. You get double triggers, double ETBs, double tokens. It's just a wonderful include in this deck. And Ashnod's Altar has a partner in crime. If you've got the money, definitely splurge into a Phyrexian Altar. This, instead of giving you 2 colorless, gives you color of a mana of any color. So you're able to fix your mana and sack creatures and aristocrat things, and just gets out of hand. It's a wonderful card. And a Crypt, also another great addition for more ramp. Definitely maybe get rid of a Commander Sphere for this and throw something like this in. 0 cost, fast ramp. Add 2, deals 3 damage if you lose the flip on upkeep. Jewel Lotus. Now, we are with the Black Lotus of Commander. Sacrifice Jewel Lotus, add 3 colors of any one color. Spend this mana only to cast commanders. Wonderful. Let's get our Keskit 1. It's good. And for the tutor package, Vampiric Tutor, we don't even need to talk about it. It's the tutor of tutors. It's a wonderful include. Then Diabolic Intent for our deck in particular with the token generation. Sacrifice a creature for a card, put it into your hand. We've got Eyes of the Dark Realms. This one might be an include right away. Put all cards from all graveyards. It's a finishing. It's a finisher. That's all it is. Wonderful card though. Definitely one to consider. And then Grave Titan. It's up to you if you want to put it in. I like it. Other people may not agree. It's definitely high CMC, but it does generate tokens, and it generates tokens on attack. The card.
Yeah. My comment and thoughts on Grave Titan. Okay, so I had thoughts and comments about this last week, but this week it's changed a little bit. So I will preface that Grave Titan is fine if your group is playing a slower paced game of Commander. So it's a fun card, big Titan, makes your zombies. But my issue with it is that for this deck especially, we're trying to get those tokens right away to sacrifice them. So for 6 mana, that is, in my opinion, a very expensive mana cost for looking at what we're doing. So if you go back to the main deck, we have a card Weaponcraft Enthusiast in the deck. So this one, it's 3 mana for 3 bodies because of the Fabricate. So if I'm looking to advance my game plan, I can play Weaponcraft Enthusiast plus another card on turn 6. If I just have Grave Titan, I'm only playing Grave Titan on turn 6. So that is my beef with Grave Titan, is that it is just a very expensive card, mana-wise. Money-wise, for the budget, it's fine. Definitely fits in the budget. But especially with the speed of Commander games increasing as time goes on. Like games are just finishing faster and faster, just naturally with all the power creep that's been happening to our beloved format, especially over the last couple of years with all the new set releases. You know, Grave Titan is just slowly being pushed to the side. I'm sad to see my boy go, but you know, I used to have a lot of fun with him back in like 2015. Nowadays, I just,
Gets
you know,
cut.
I cut him more than I play him. It's unfortunate.
It all depends on, again, the style of play that you're doing and what the package is in the deck. And yes, Weapon Craft Enthusiast definitely takes a slot in the main board right now. But if you have a Grave Titan and you don't have a Weapon Craft and you don't feel like ordering one for 16 cents, hey, it's a Grave Titan. You're not gonna be completely disappointed. That's the point.
Yeah, Grave Titan's always going to do something, right? I mean, but is it going to do it in the most optimal way?
As we will like to say on the Fabled Upkeep, if you want to play a Frog deck, play Grave Titan. If you want to play a more optimized deck, play Weapon Craft Enthusiast. Play both. So, thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in and enjoying this. Keep an eye out for some videos of this deck doing some work on MTGO. We will be releasing some videos of this in the future. I hope y'all enjoyed, and thanks again.
Thank you very much.
Yep. See y'all later.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.